Alright, so I was doing some wiring repair the other day, and I've showed this before on another video I did a while back on a Ford harness, wiring harness. Some squirrels got into it and damaged it, and I repaired it using this method. But I've never made an actual video on this, and I thought it'd be a good idea to do that in case someone didn't see that video. And plus, I just want to kind of devote a video just to this. There's something out, I discovered about 3 or 4 years ago. They've probably been out way longer than that. But uh, it can replace, if you're going to do wiring repair on automotive, the standard has always been soldering gun, and you need the actual soldering gun, you need solder, and you need flux or paste to keep it to help it stick, and and then you're going to need you're going to need shrink wrap too, heat shrink to do proper repair on it. And then sometimes it's kind of hard to get into the area and solder it, and it's not always easy. And then the other, if you're kind of a backyard person, you may try to use these butt connectors, um, where you strip the wire back, and then you crush the wire in here. And I don't really know of any situation in automotive where I use these at all, except for I do use these still if I'm installing a radio on a car, just because sometimes people want to take the car back to stock when they sell it or whatever, and it's kind of an area where if you do these right, if you get a good pair of, you know, uh, splicers with the notch in it, you can make a pretty solid connection on it. And then the car radio is behind the dash; it's not really exposed to anything. So that is literally the only time I ever use these is if I'm installing an aftermarket radio on a car, and I feel fine doing it with that. But other than that, like, I would never use them for any kind of wiring harness repair, something like that, because they have a tendency to pull out, and they're not real good with moisture and all that. So basically, even now, like when I wire up trailer harnesses and stuff like that, I use this new method. Well, it's not new, but it's newer to me. I've been using it about 3 or 4 years. So you can replace all that, and you don't need any special tools besides maybe a heat gun. If you were in a pinch, maybe a lighter, and get some of these solder and seal connectors. Now I get them at eBay. Most auto parts stores don't sell them. I believe, from what I understand, originally it was kind of a marine application type thing. So that's actually good for automotive because marine applications, it's got normally a lot of water and moisture, and a rougher environment than probably a car goes through. I mean, I don't know. It's close, but there's definitely a lot of moisture involved with marine applications. And I get these on eBay. I'm sure there's other sources, places to get it. Um, but I generally get them at eBay, and I've been using these probably 3 or 4 years. I've never had one fail on me. As long as it was installed correctly, and you let it sit for a few minutes, uh, they're just not going to fail. I've never had one fail. It's the same thing as basically soldering it. The good thing about these is you don't need the heat shrink or anything, because once you heat this up, what it is, it's basically, it looks like a butt connector, a regular butt connector, but this middle part right here is solder. It's got a ring in it with solder. You put the two wires in, ring them together, and then this here is a water seal. So once you heat this up and go over this whole thing, you have a tight solder connection, and it actually has a ring around it to seal water out, and it's a very strong connection. I've never had a problem with these the whole time I've used them, 3 or 4 years. I mean, it's not something. If you have a wiring issue or whatever, I have no problem using these, even on the outside of the engine, not just on the interior, but anywhere basically. And then usually what I do, if you're in a wiring harness and you use these, if it's just a couple wires, there's no wire loom around it. A lot of times I'll put wire loom around it, or I'll just tape it up real good, like you would a normal wiring harness. And if it's in the wiring harness with a big loom or whatever, you're just going to end up using these and then stuffing it back in there and taping the loom back up. So either way, it's basically double protected, and these will not pull out. The wires will not pull out like you would your standard butt connector. I mean, I'm sure it's happened, but it's never happened to me. And you know, it's soldered on, so it's just like basically soldered it. So anyway, I'll kind of run down and show you how to use it. It's very simple, but we'll just get it set up and we'll do one, and I'll show you how it works, and then you can decide if it's right for you. If you're going to do any kind of wiring on an automotive, though, these work really well, and like I said, I've had no problem using it. These I got on Amazon, and these here, I don't even know, it's Cyanoxy, I don't know if they're still around or not. These here, you had to let it cool pretty long before, but actually I thought this box was no good, because I would heat it up, and I'd wait 2 minutes or whatever, and the wires would pull right out. And anyway, with these, for whatever reason, I don't know why, if you let them sit for 5 minutes or longer, then it's almost impossible, or is impossible, to pull them out. But I've had the same experience with these too. Just let them cool a little bit longer than you would normally, and they'll hold after they cool down. So anyway, and these, I got these off of Amazon too. I've only used a few out of this one so far, but they've worked well. I just did a camshaft or crankshaft sensor that had got caught on an axle and was shorting out, and I ended up repairing it with this, and it worked fine. These are SOPOBY. Just go on Amazon and put in solder and seal connectors, and you'll come up with different variations. I found, automotive use, you're going to use more like the 16 to 14, 10 to 12 gauge. You're not going to use too much of the bigger ones, like this. Yeah, you're pretty much going to be using the blue and the red, 16, 14, 22, 18. Very rarely will you use a real small 20, 24, 26, or the 10, 12, which is the real big ones. So if you're going to buy a kit, you want it heavy on, 16, 14, and 22, 18 gauge. And this kit's like that. It's got 150 and 150 on those two, and just 40 and 60 on the other two. So you're not going to be, like I said, in automotive, you're not going to use that too much, those other two sizes. The 10 to 12 gauge or 26, 24 gauge. But anyway, just be aware of that. Like if you're getting this, you want to be in basically the 14 to 22 range gauge wire for most automotive stuff. So I'll go ahead and get this set up a little bit, and we'll do one, and I'll show you how it works, and then end it out, and you can decide if you want to use them or not. I actually love them. It's one of my favorite things I've discovered in the last 5 years or so, automotive wise, because I've been in many trunks of cars and underneath cars, and real hard to get spots. And for me, it's easier just to connect the two wires with one of these and get the heat gun up there than it is to try to hold the wires together, which you have to hold. You have to do that with this a little bit, but then you got to get the paste on there and the solder and heat it up, and it takes time, and then the wires come apart. To me, it just seems these are much easier to work with, but and I still do some soldering depending on the application, but I pretty much went to these almost exclusively for most wiring harness repairs or trailer or stuff like that. But I'll go ahead and do one real quick, and then you can decide for yourself if you want to use them or not. Alright, so I'm just going to strip a wire off here, and you're just going to strip like you normally would. And believe it or not, a lot of people in the automotive industry don't even know about these. I've talked to many mechanics that weren't aware of these. And like I said, I just discovered them probably 3 or 4 years ago. So I'm just going to make a Get 2 wires here, and we'll cut them in half and then join them together. And we're just going to strip it. Normally I don't twist these super tight, because what you're going to do is they're going to join in together inside that butt connector. So if you got these super tight, a lot of times they'll bunch up or whatever. So just keep that in mind. I'm just going to grab one of the red connectors, which is 12 to 18, no, 18 to 22 gauge, and I'm going to put one end in, and what I do usually is I get it in there, the wire up a little bit past, if I got stripped along far enough, I get a little past the solder, and then I make sure that the insulation is, well into this side ring here, the seal for the water. And then we're just going to feed this other one in, and they'll meet and pass each other. So now it's kind of, they're both in there, they're both in about the same, a little bit of gap in between, they're both overlapped on each other, and both the insulation on the wires are past this ring here to seal it out from water or moisture or whatever. So now that it's together like that, you just take a heat gun and heat it up, and I just drop the wire, which is one of the problems when you're trying to solder on a car. A lot of times the wires, I'm going to get my solder stand real quick, just so I don't have to hold this wire while I'm heating it up. What if I burn my finger? So I'm going to get that real quick, and then I'll be right back. Alright, so I just got this set up in a solder stand. Of course, if you're in a car or something, you probably won't be able to have that, but you could make something like this. Sometimes I'll take this out off of the stand and use it. I have a smaller one too that goes, closer in to hold it. Sometimes on a car, usually they're not pulled tight enough to where they'll fall out. It just depends on the situation. But anyway, we're just going to heat it up, and you'll actually see the solder start to come out of that ring after it gets hot enough. It takes a few minutes. I just kind of went over here on these sides and sealed up the ends of them. And I'm starting to see solder over here coming out. It doesn't come out of the sheathing, but you can see it soldering the wires together. So that should be good. I'm going to let it cool down a little bit. I kind of like these see-through ones better. They do sell like these here. This is more of a solid sheathing where you can't really see the solder that well or what's going on. And these here don't have the seal around the wire to seal out moisture. So on like this type here, I probably wouldn't use it on anything that's outside of the car. And I don't normally buy these. This kit came with the other ones too, like this. That has the seal, the water seal, and you can see through and see the solder. But I'm almost out of those, so I don't use these too much. For one thing, they're a heavier gauge, and then the other thing is I can't see what's going on as well with them. So I prefer these see-through ones. So if you're going to do automotive, I would recommend doing this style here where you can see through them, and go from there. Now, like I said, I'm going to let this cool down. I'm actually pretty proud of myself. You can see my battery here. This is for my lawn tractor, and I got it on a battery tender. That's probably the first time I've ever done that since I've owned a lawn tractor in the last 20 years. Usually I forget about it, and then go back out in spring and the battery's trash. I got to buy a new one. So this is actually the most adult thing I've done. Probably, I don't know, probably 2 decades. I actually took it out of my tractor and put it on a battery tender. Very proud of that. But Anyway, like I said, I'm going to let it sit here for a few minutes and let it cool down. Usually about 5 minutes or so. It'll take some pulling on it, but if you would pull right away, like right now, it's probably, yeah, it's already. I think it's good now, but I'm still gonna wait a few minutes and then we'll pull on it and see if it comes apart and go from there. But there's not much else to say about it. As far as you can see how easy it is. And don't get me wrong, I know how to solder. I've been soldering since grade school. Was big into computers, and back then it was a Commodore. We would open up the disk drive and solder the board to make it change from one letter. Usually, like if on those it was a -8 was the address for the disk drive, and then we would go in there and wire up a switch and solder a switch up so we can make it a different number. So you have multiple drives. So I've been soldering, since I was in grade school. I've had RC cars, the more professional kind, my whole life, and soldered on those. So I'm very confident in my soldering, but something like this is I think it's awesome. It's one of the favorite things that's happened to me in the automotive industry. It's just, I 100% trust it, and I'm confident when I use them. So, like I said, I've been using them now 3 or 4 years. I've never had a car come back yet for an issue with it. Alright, so it's been sitting about 5 minutes now, so we'll go ahead and take it out of here. And the other trick too is if you're doing this like under the hood or something, a lot of times if you get them in there really good and just go ahead and melt the ends of this first, it'll kind of hold it in there while you're actually doing the actual melt part of the solder. So I'm just going to pull on it, wrap my finger around it, and give it a really good tug. And you can see there it's pretty strong. I could probably, if this was a little bit longer, I could probably pull it apart, maybe. I don't know. But it's plenty strong. Plenty strong for anything to do with automotive, I would think. So that's pretty much it. That's all I want to show you. You can, these are 100 times better than using a regular butt connector that you just crush. And I mean, nothing probably replaces actual soldering if you're good at soldering. Now, if you're not good at soldering, this is almost dummy proof. The biggest thing I would say on these is make sure you get them overlapped real well. They're put together real well on the inside. Heat them up until you see a little bit of solder, and then let them sit for a while. Don't try to pull on them right away or you'll pull it right out, just like you would on normal solder. I do think these take longer to dry per se than a normal solder does. A normal solder you can give it a few, 30, 40 seconds. A lot of times it's pretty tight. These, if you wait 30 or 40 seconds to pull on, they're going to pull right out. So there's not as much solder, obviously, in those loops than there would be if you were soldering directly. But like I said, I've been doing this a really long time, and I'm extremely confident that these are just fine for almost every application that I can think of. So as far as automotive goes, so that's pretty much it. And then, like I said, if you're not, solder quite a bit, then it's really good. And I also like it too because there's just less stuff going on with them. You get the 2 wires in the butt connector, heat them up, and you're done. With the solder, you got to get them together, and then you got to cut the heat shrink down, and hope the heat shrink doesn't melt when you're heating up the wire. And then you have to put paste on there, and then heat them up, and then slide the heat shrink over and hope that the solder's not too fat at that point. I mean, that's all stuff that you learn over the years to get better at. I'm just saying, like, if you're new to it or it's not something you do a lot of, this eliminates all that headache. And pretty much makes it dummy proof as long as, like I said, as long as you set it up right and let it cool long enough. So, and like I said, I get these at Amazon. I don't know what brand is better than the other. I've used these, and then a couple years ago I had another box that I ran through. Not even sure what brand it was, but from what I can tell, they're all pretty good. So I haven't had trouble with any of them. And of course, always, anytime, whenever you do something like this, tug on them and make sure that it's nice and secure. Don't just assume that it did its job, or you could get a faulty one, or maybe you didn't get enough heat in it, or maybe it wasn't overlapped right. So anytime you do anything like that, always pull on them a little bit and make sure that they're sealed up good. Don't just assume they are. But anyway, I guess that's about it for that. Just wanted to go over that and show you the solder and seal connectors. I don't think any of the major...
a few coffee shops near you.
I don't know why she's talking. I don't think any of the major auto parts stores carry these. At least not here in St. Louis. I haven't found any. And I don't know where you would get them besides online. I'm sure somebody somewhere sells them. And maybe there is an auto parts store that sells them somewhere. But I haven't found any that sell them. So anyway, that's about it. Hopefully this helps somebody. And if you're need to do some repairs or even to wire up a trailer or something, can't go wrong with these. So I think that's about it. We'll end it out here. As always, God bless.